Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am super excited for tonight's live. We will be talking about how to recognize those toxic behaviors, those toxic patterns that keep us stuck in cycles of toxic relationships. So, once again, welcome, welcome, welcome to all of you that are joining me here live, all of you that'll be watching the replay. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited because this series, it's a four-part series where we're really going to be dismantling how to recognize toxic behaviors and break free from those patterns. So if you've ever experienced a toxic relationship, a relationship that has left you feeling drained, that has left you feeling unworthy of love, that has left you in a space that you have questioned why has this happened to me? Why has this relationship turned out the way that it did? Today, I want to shed light on how we can start recognizing these toxic patterns, these toxic behaviors in order to avoid toxic relationships. So once again, welcome, welcome, welcome to all of you that are new to me. My name is Christina. I'm a love and relationship coach, and I help driven and ambitious women break free from toxic relationships, heal and renew their trust and love so that they can enjoy healthy and lasting relationships. Now, I want to share a little bit about how I came to be a relationship coach. What brought me to this space of being able to help other women free themselves from toxic patterns and toxic relationships. So, once upon a time, I found myself expecting. And while for many that's one of the most joyous moments in life, for me it was a moment of an awakening. I had to really come face to face with my experience. And I thought to myself, I'm about to bring a child into this world. And I looked back on my relationship and I saw that this was not the kind of example that I wanted to set for my child. I wanted to bring her up in a loving environment, in a relationship that exemplified love, respect. And that was not the relationship that I was in. So at that moment, finding out that I was expecting, I had been in a toxic relationship on and off for 7 years, and I made the decision to break free from that and change my life, change the way that I did relationships, because I wanted to be the best example for her. Now, for many of you that have been in a situation that's similar, maybe you've done it for your children, maybe you've done it for yourself, but the truth is that no one deserves to be in a toxic relationship. So being able to recognize what brings you to a toxic relationship is key. Now, there's a lot of things, right, that we can start to see in someone's character and how someone treats you that you can be alarmed and be like, wait a minute, this is toxic. But many times the toxicity isn't recognized immediately. And there's a couple of reasons for that. For one, perhaps your experience growing up, your childhood, has in a sense primed you to these toxic relationships because you start to think that this is normal. This is how things are. So, how could it be toxic if this is what I'm used to? This is what I've come to know. And I'll share with you a story, for those of you that are Latinos or Hispanics, or you grow up watching these novelas, right? These soap operas where it's very dramatic. There's always drama, there's always cheating, and someone's getting slapped and something's always going on. And it's just relationships filled with drama where the protagonist, right, the good person, the good guy, always has to go through all these ordeals to finally have a happy ending, a happy relationship, to finally get the guy at the end, right? So I grew up in this kind of environment where every night we would sit there and watch these novelas. And I came to think dramatic relationships, drama in relationships, that's normal, right? That's how it is. You got to go through all these things. You got to win the guy over even after he cheated, even after he's put you through hell. right? You got to get the guy. So you can see, right, how the stories that we sometimes see in our lives growing up, whether it's from society, right? How many of us, right, have seen all these children's movies where similar, right? Little Mermaid loses her voice to get the guy, to get some legs, right? Where women throw their lives away trying to get the love, trying to get that approval, right? Similarly, in homes where maybe you've had that parent that you're just always trying to win their approval. You're always trying to prove that you're worthy of their love, of their admiration, of their attention, period, right? And you can see how these things and these experiences from growing up to becoming a young adult, when you start, learning about relationships and relating to to people in that sense, in a more romantic sense, in a more intimate sense, can become confusing, can come as an unknown factor when you don't have that necessarily modeled at home, right? How many of us have come from, what we call broken homes, right? Maybe a parent leaves, whether that's your mother or your father. Maybe, there is no parent there for you. Perhaps, there has been a divorce, a separation that really caused a rift in the relationship with your parents. So all of these experiences in your life start to shape the way that you see and the way that you do relationships. And they shape the way that you see what's tolerable and what's not tolerable, what's normal and what's not normal. And so you grow up in an environment where perhaps there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of upheaval, whether it's, like I said, from direct experiences with you and your family and your partners as you start to date, or where it's from society, right? And media and what society deems is right and what media shows you and kind of, in a sense, subconsciously starts to create this narrative of this is how relationships are. This is the pattern, right? That begins to embed itself in your subconscious, and you begin to act this out in your life. Once again, subconsciously. Many times we're not even aware. And I share this with you because many times as we get into these relationships, these toxic relationships with people that mistreat us, with people that disrespect us, you start to think, how could I have allowed this? In what mind, right, did I think that this was okay for this to go down this way? And I want to share with you, first and foremost, it's not your fault. You're not alone. And the most important part to remember is that there's no one out there that you can control but yourself, right? As we recognize these toxic patterns, right, in other people, it's up to us to make the decision whether we want to stick around, whether we want to leave, whether this is something we're willing to tolerate. And once again, those lines become a little bit blurry when you're used to the drama, to the upheaval, to needing to prove yourself, needing to prove your worth, whether that's to a parent or a boss, and how that manifests in your personal relationships. So once again, I share this because as we start diving deep into recognizing toxic behaviors and toxic traits, I want us to remember that all in all, it's not up to us to change other people, but to recognize those red flags, to recognize those behaviors, and really set a standard for ourselves on whether that's the kind of relationship you want to pursue, that's the kind of relationship you want to entertain, or if you decide that you want more, that you want to be respected, that you want to be loved, that you want to be cared for, and in a nourishing relationship. So, once again, it starts when we're young, and these things manifest into different subconscious patterns and ways of thinking about relationships, right? How many of you have heard, right? Once a cheater, always a cheater, or men are all dogs, or they're all the same. So these generalized statements, right, are obviously not right. They're not real. They don't reflect the reality. But many of us have heard them growing up. Many of us have ideas of what relationships should be like, what love should look like, whether that's from fairy tales, whether that's from television, our experiences. They all shape the way that we do relationships. So many times when your perception of what you think is a healthy relationship might in fact not be a healthy relationship. It might in fact not even raise an alarm, right? You know how you want to recognize those red flags. Many times those behaviors don't raise an alarm because in your mind, in your heart, in your subconscious, in a sense, you're primed to that. And that's the comfort zone. So when you do meet someone who is not controlling, who is not manipulative, who's not disrespectful, who's kind, right? Who's that nice guy, many times we don't know how to act. We push that person away because it's not what you're used to. So I want us to start thinking about when we look at these relationships that are dysfunctional, that are toxic, that are filled with drama and upheaval, is this what I want? Is this how I want to feel? Or is this, just something that I'm used to? Is this something that seems similar and familiar in a sense? And that familiarity breeds a level of comfort because that's what you're familiar with. When you meet the nice guy, that's different, that's new, and that's sometimes you recoil, it repels you because it's not what you're normally used to. You're not used to being treated with respect. You're not used to being cared for and looked after and having someone that wants to know more about you before they just hop into bed with you. So these are the things that we want to start to recognize within ourselves, because it's impossible to recognize it in others if we cannot recognize in ourselves, is this the way that I want to have a relationship, or am I just used to it because of my upbringing, because of how I've been doing relationships, because what I've been told, this is how relationships are supposed to be. So I want to stress this point because many times when you do see those red flags, they go completely ignored. It's like, oh, he'll change. I'm going to win him over and he'll start to see that I'm the greatest thing that's ever happened to him. And once again, that could stem from that need to feel validated, that need to win someone's approval, to win someone's love. So these are the things you want to pay attention to, because once again, we can only change ourselves. We're not out here to change others and their behavior. It's up to us to recognize the behavior and to decide if that's the kind of relationship you want to continue to partake in, or if you want better. And what does that better look like, right? So in the checklist that I created the toxic red flags checklist. And you can grab that I'm going to put the link for that in the description so that you grab that. It's also in my bio. So if you want to, after we end this session, if you want to head over there and register, it's going to get sent right to your email. We go into details of the red flag behaviors, when someone's looking to control you and manipulate you and invalidate your feelings. So these are the behaviors, once again, that we can recognize in others, but can we recognize it in ourselves where we allow that behavior, where we continue to make excuses for that behavior? Oh, well, he just had a long day. It was a rough day at work, so he's not normally like this, right? How many of you have ever been in that kind of situation where you have felt that way, where you have thought that? looking to excuse someone else's poor behavior, right? So here's the thing, once again, when it comes to recognizing toxic behaviors, it has to resonate with us that this is not the kind of behavior, this is not the kind of relationship that I want. If not, it will continue to go overlooked. If not, it will continue to be the pattern of little you, right? Of child you looking for your parents' approval or looking for their attention or seeking to be validated by them. It comes out in those relationships. And then you dismiss the red flags, you dismiss the controlling behavior, you dismiss the person that's in and out of your life, you dismiss the person who has no care for your thoughts, your feelings, you dismiss the fact that they only come looking around for pleasure, for the moment, and then they drop you. And you dismiss all of that because somewhere inside of you, that feels familiar. That feels like what you're used to. And on the cycle goes as you continue to partake in this dynamic that leaves you feeling depleted energetically. It leaves you feeling shame, guilt on how you could allow this to happen to you, on how someone could dare treat you this way after you've given all your love, all your support, after you've given all of yourself to be repaid in this manner. And once again, we explore these dynamics because it's one thing to recognize the behavior, and then there's another thing to do something about it. Now, as I've said, there's nothing that we can do to change someone else. Nothing. Absolutely nothing you can do to change someone else. The only one that you can do anything about is you. So what will you choose to do? Do you choose to communicate and share how you're feeling in hopes to work it out? Do you choose to lower your standards because that's the person you want and that's what you're going to do and you're going to make it work because when you love somebody, you make it work, right? How many of you have heard that dynamic before? It's the old school way, right? When women really had no vote, had no say, they were at a certain point property. And that was just part of the deal. You have to deal with everything in order to make it work because without that person, you are nothing. And unfortunately, that idea, that paradigm has been deeply ingrained into a lot of the societies. And even though we are in a more modern world where we do have liberties and we're able to vote and go shopping and get our own credit cards and buy our own stuff, right? There's still a tinge of that deeply woven into the fabric of this is where you came from, right? Similarly to how your upbringing and your past experiences leave a certain imprint in your subconscious mind, so does the history of how women have been treated, how women have been objectified. And that plays a role in how society has shaped the way that you see love, that you see relationships. So once again, being able to uncover this, because it being in your subconscious, it might not be something that you really thought about before. But in having this conversation, it gives you the opportunity to examine that part of yourself, of where have you been allowing or condoning this behavior, right? And we can go into the why, why, oh, when I was younger, my father left, so I have, these abandonment issues, and I'm scared they're gonna leave me, so I make sure, right? We can go into the root of it and really examine it. But after a while, like I said, this is what I do when I work with my clients. But after a while, that examining, right, can be a little bit of a two-faced coin. Yes, you get to understand why you allow toxic behaviors or why you're hell-bent on making the relationship work when they're not respectful, they're not loving, And you can once again trace it back to your father leaving, or this relationship not working out. You can trace it back to all of that. But there comes a point where you just realize that it doesn't even matter where it stemmed from. What matters is what you want to do now. What matters is how you want to feel now, the kind of relationship you want to have, the kind of relationship dynamics you wish to cultivate and nourish and explore. So I share this with you because, once again, we cannot change other people. It's in us to make those decisions for ourselves, whether we stay, whether we go, whether we elevate our standards, whether we set those boundaries to protect ourselves, to do better, or if we continue to play into the cycle of, being little you, going along with everything just to gain approval, just to gain that validation. So you see, all in all, even if you've been in toxic relationships, even if you've experienced relationships that have taken a toll on your mental state, on your emotional state, you get to decide and you get to choose. Is that someplace you want to stay? Or is that something you want to overcome? Because, like I said, it could be a two-faced coin. Knowing where that originates from, like the abandonment, right? My father abandoned me, so I feel like I need to do what I need to do so that it doesn't happen to me in my relationship. That can also become well, that's why I am the way I am. And then it becomes that validation to you continuing to allow these cycles of unhealthy relationships. Well, that's just the way I am. My father left, and ever since, it's just the way that I am. And that's why I want to shed light and debunk that and remind you that no matter what you've been through, what you've experienced, you get to rewrite your story. You get to heal, to renew your trust in love, to renew your trust in yourself, and to change those stories, to change those imprints that, once again, sometimes we don't even recognize because they're in that subconscious part of us, that it's just the way that you've learned it. But the way that you've learned it doesn't necessarily have to stay that way, right? Just like when you learn anything else, a skill, you can refine that skill. You can change it, right? You can learn something else. So once again, shedding light on this, because many times when you do come from that, the unhealthy relationship just feels familiar. It feels comforting because it's what you're used to. All that drama, all the shame, all the guilt, it feels familiar. And in your body, familiar feels safe. So shedding light on that is recognizing, where in me am I perpetuating this? Where in me am I continuing to go along with these cycles? And where is it that I want to actually go? What is it that I actually want to feel? What kind of relationships do I actually want to have? And you get to redesign that. You get to decide for yourself the kind of love, the kind of relationship, the kind of partnership that you want to have. Like I said, for me, that wake-up call came when I found out I was expecting. And I realized I was like, the relationship that I'm in is not the relationship that I want to model for my child. The relationship that I'm in is not a healthy environment for her. So what am I going to do about it? I could sit here and try to change someone else who hasn't changed in 7 years. Or I can reevaluate and change me, and change the way that I do things, and change the standards that I hold myself by. So, once again, this is about recognizing toxic behaviors and toxic patterns, because in order to break free and break through those, it starts with you. It starts with you realizing where you're at and where you want to be, because where you've been is not where you're going. So I want to thank you so much for being here with me in this first session. As we continue this conversation and this series on recognizing toxic behaviors, once again, we will be going more in depth into the practical things and what to look for in a partner that might raise that red flag. You want to go ahead and grab that checklist at toxicredflags.com. You can grab the free checklist, and it details from behaviors to emotional to all the ways that someone can try to abuse you and be toxic with you and manipulate you. And we really outline it there. And we're going more into that tomorrow when we talk about the effects of toxic relationships. But I want to remind you that you can heal, you can overcome that, you can change and rewrite your story. I'll be hosting at the end of this series, we'll be starting Heal. It's a 7-week program where that's exactly what we do. We heal. We work on uncovering those hurt places, those places from our childhood, from our subconscious, to heal and mend those so that you can enjoy healthy relationships, so that you can be open to having a relationship that is filled with love, filled with support, and a partner that cherishes you for who you are. So for more information on that, I will go ahead and put it in the description so you can check it out and see if it's something that you want to continue to do. But just being here alone and starting to recognize what those toxic patterns are, what those toxic thoughts, feelings are, you're already one step closer to healing and breaking free from toxic patterns and toxic relationships. So thank you so much for joining me today. We'll be seeing each other on our next session. And as I always say, choose you, choose love, stay blessed, and I'll see you on the next one.